Hello again and welcome back to Legally Cited. This is Jesse and I am back for a bonus video for you guys today. Yesterday they had the WWDC Apple event and the bulk of this video is going to be talking about that, more specifically the newly announced Apple Vision Pro headset, which I have lots of thoughts, lots of questions, lots of potential reservations. But I'm very intrigued about the device. We're going to talk about that last because that is what I'm going to spend the most time on. But before we talk about the Apple event, I just want to give people a little bit of a heads up. I know there's been a few bonus videos recently, and there will likely be a few more within the next week or two. We have all the non-E3 events coming up, including Jeff Keighley's thing. We've got an actual game accessibility announcement stream. I think that's on Friday. We have the Microsoft and was it Skyfall? No, not Skyfall. That's James Bond, isn't it? Starfield event, which I'm looking forward to. And lots of other stuff. We even got a couple things on Monday, Capcom and Ubisoft. So I will be back at work again by Monday, so that one I'll have to maybe catch up on, when I can. But up until that point, we may have a few bonus videos because I'm sure there'll be stuff that I will want to talk about. And for anybody new here, I do usually unlock videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So if you're new here and you're confused about what the schedule is, just know that sometimes, if there are things that are really happening in tech or gaming or accessibility, I may do some bonus stuff like we are now. And in a couple of weeks, we have the XR Access Symposium, which I'm looking forward to. So, especially after the Meta and the Apple announcements. So, actually, speaking of Meta, I don't think I've really talked about them yet because I think they really tried to get their word out there before Apple announced their stuff yesterday. So we are getting a Quest 3, and it's going to be coming out later this year for about $500. And people thought that was kind of expensive. It looks kind of weird. It's white. I wonder if it'll come in like a white and a black. But it's this white headset, and it's got these little camera thingies. It almost looks like little like rectangular thingies or windows on the front of it. Not quite sure. It's got some new controllers and stuff. It looks potentially interesting, but again, it's not something I'm even really considering buying at this point, unless I hear that they are including some form of accessibility, at least if they start trying to implement system-wide accessibility to their platform, having a screen reader, having text-to-speech, having something so I can actually navigate the interface or navigate their settings or, buy an app or launch an app within the headset itself. I've bought two of their headsets. I bought a Rift and a Quest, and they're still zero, nothing. Like, yeah, they've talked about accessibility vaguely in the past, but nothing consumer facing has actually happened yet. So, unless I were given one to review, or unless they actually let us know ahead of time what type of accessibility they're going to be including. Yeah, some of the games that they announced look kind of cool. There's a Ghostbusters one that looked pretty fun. There's a lot of these medieval, like hack and slash RPG medieval type things. There's some stuff in there that looks actually really kind of cool. But again, I'm not going to fight. I've tried advocating for VR accessibility with Meta and Oculus over the past, God, it's been like 8 years now. And so they have proven that they just haven't released anything yet. So I'm not going to support them anymore until they do. Because like I said, I keep getting these Oculus or these Meta emails like, hey, check out this title. I'm like, nah, I'm not even going to bother. Um, because I'm not spending any more money on that platform until it happens. But now that they have announced their price at $500, and now Apple has announced their price, price-wise, the Apple or the Meta headset's looking pretty good. Even the PSVR 2 is looking pretty good for a price if you have a PS5. Um, but yeah, we'll see how things shake up in the next year or so. So before we get back into VR and AR, I do want to touch briefly on all the other stuff that they had at WWDC. I'm not going to cover everything like sequentially or anything like that. I'm just going to, try to pick out a few highlights and lowlights and weird things that they covered. Because the first half of their keynote was actually pretty boring to me, honestly. I mean, there were some okay nuggets in there. I mean, if you really like Mac laptops, they have a new MacBook Air 15-inch, and then they have a MacBook Studio, which is ungodly expensive, um, and they have another MacBook Pro. So yeah, they've updated all their Mac lineups. Their MacBook Air Pro and Studio. So those are fine if you're looking for a new one, but it kind of seems like an incremental upgrade again, just like a lot of their stuff does, even their phones and stuff. It's like, oh, we've had really pretty good phones for the last several years, and now they're just kind of making their minor camera bumps, processor bumps, whatever. Not that they're bad, but it's like if you own one within the last couple of years, I don't think there's really any real need to rush out and upgrade. So we've got new hardware from them. iOS and iPadOS, they really didn't cover much that was all that exciting. There are a few nice features that I am sort of looking forward to. Being able to basically touch the devices near each other and share content, share yourself as a contact, or your photos or a video or something. It's nice that that's finally coming, but I mean, come on, man. Android has had that for what, almost a decade. So they're finally playing catch up and with a feature that I think they should have had years ago. That's fine. I did like the uh, basically the live voicemail. So if you get an unknown number and you can see the text transcription as they're leaving a voicemail, to see like, maybe I should answer this, or no, I'm just going to let this one go to voicemail. Um, that could be kind of handy. I think that's something that Android has had again for a while as well. But again, you know what? That is actually a useful feature, so I'm not gonna complain. They did a lot of to me anyway, a lot of frivolous, like fluffy visual stuff. It's like, hey, look at we have posters now. So for our contacts, you can have a photo and it's tied to your contact card. And when they call you, you get the poster of them. I mean, I guess it's a quick way to, glance and if you can't see the name or something, you just, set a picture for them and be like, oh, okay, that's really easy to tell. But I mean, it's fine, I guess, but it's nothing that seems really all that exciting to me anyway. And then I had to laugh when they were talking about the Mac, and one of their big features this year was new screensavers. Has anyone actually used a screensaver in like the last 25 years? I sure haven't. I think Windows still has screensavers as an option under display somewhere. If they do, I don't even know where it is. Like I said, the last time I think I've ever used a screensaver was like Windows 95, maybe 98. And that's just even a novelty back then. Because I just turned my monitor off when I wasn't using it. Yeah, sure, okay, screensavers. I mean, it's just kind of funny. Like, you have this big keynote where you can announce new big platforms and new things. And it's like, yeah, you can tell they're kind of reaching for stuff. If they're talking about posters and screensavers, really, guys? Okay, whatever. Um, what else for iOS? I mean, they touched on new things for messaging and your, messaging and contacts and things like that. So, a little bit more sharing abilities and stuff like that. That should be fine. Being able to, if you're in like, let's say, a texting conversation and then you walk away for a while and they send you a bunch of messages, you can start, boom, pick up right where you last left off reading easily. That's a useful thing, sure. Um, but to me, there really wasn't much. Um, there really wasn't much new about iPhone or iPad, iOS or iPad OS that was like, oh my god, I can't wait to try that. Some years it's like, ooh, I really want to try that, like the dark theme or different things. Now they did announce a few things back in May for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. There are going to be some nice things, um, you know, both for like the thing where you can read some text. I think they said about 15 minutes worth of text, and then generate a voice based on that. So people who may have something like ALS or something and that may eventually lose their voice, if they get it, or if they can record it early enough, they can still use their own voice, and then they could be able to talk. That's pretty cool. Or let's say maybe you have a sick relative and you want to be able to capture, I don't know, like, I don't know, just you want to use their voice as a screen reader, or as maybe a Siri voice or something. I don't know if it'll work for Siri, but um, there's some interesting use cases for that, especially around disability. Now, of course, there are some nefarious things that you could do with that, which, of course, some idiot's going to try. But I like what they're doing behind that. Um, I like the thing where they were talking about using magnifier and being able to like point at an appliance like a microwave, a thermostat, a stove, or a washing machine, and as you point at a button, it would tell you what you're pointing at. And like I said, there's a few other. There's like the simplistic user interface thing. I don't remember exactly what these are called, but I'm just kind of giving you guys an overview. People were saying stuff about, oh, that's good for blind or low vision who want something more simple. But honestly, I think it's really could be more useful for new users in general, or seniors who kind of are overwhelmed with, they just still have, they're still, they really haven't caught on to this whole touch screen and gestures thing, and they want to use buttons, or, there's no buttons really on iOS or physical buttons. So it could be something that, instead of buying one of these devices that are, you're paying ungodly amounts a month, um, for these dead simple devices, if you can simplify um, an iOS thing, it's like, it's kind of like guided access, but it's a little bit, it's not just it's not just limiting you to one app. You could say, oh, well, all they need to do is they need this, 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 and this app, and then the other stuff they don't even have to know or care. That could be really potentially helpful for a certain group of people. I think that could be. I mean, I'm not likely to use it myself, but I think it's great that it's there. Um, they did talk a lot about health, both the health app actually coming to the iPad, so that's a good thing. So now it's on the phone, the watch, and the iPad. That's good. Um, Speaking of the watch, from what to me, when I was watching the presentation parts of it, it didn't seem like the watch was super different. Like I thought some parts of it might be, but it was hard to kind of tell exactly the flow of what the new user interface is going to be like. I thought it was going to be pretty similar, but then I was reading something on Twitter last night. Somebody was saying, "Oh wow, this is totally different." And they actually, when you for the first time you activate it, it actually turns on, or it actually goes through a new tutorial on how to use the new interface, because apparently you don't swipe up to go to the control center anymore. So yeah, I guess I am sort of curious now what the new interface is going to be like. But they're focusing again a lot more on fitness and health. They've got there's a new journal app coming to iOS later this year, so you can write down your moods and like what was like, oh, I was worrying about financial stuff, or somebody, I got to do this really awesome thing and I want to remember it. And I guess it tracks, so your mental health. You can take these surveys, these pre-made surveys that kind of ask you about how you're doing mentally, and give you recommendations if things aren't going so well. It's like you might want to talk to somebody. Um, so that's good. Um, so there's journaling. There's this mental health tracking thing, and there's also a vision health section that they're adding, I guess. And they're talking. The two things that they really mentioned were like getting out and exposure to sunlight for so long every day, and then screen distance, which yes, I totally get, but I kind of had to laugh as they were talking about it because I'm like, well, yeah, well, I'm legally blind, and if I really do want to see some things on my phone, guess what? I'm going to be pretty dang close to my phone, and that's just the way it's going to be. So you can yell at me all you want, but I'm still going to look at my phone pretty close because I need to sometimes. But yeah, I mean, so we got new stuff. We got vision health, mental health. We got some new cycling and hiking stuff for the watch. And the cycling stuff, if you're into, biking and that's pretty cool. I like the hiking stuff because they really focused on if you're out in the middle of nowhere and maybe on your route you need to know, oh, where was the last place I got a good cell signal because I need to really check with my family on something real quick. Or, oh, something really, really went wrong and I need an emergency contact. Where's the nearest place where I can not just get my cell signal, but any cell signal to get that emergency communication out? I think that's a really smart thing to do. So, I mean, those actually, if you're into those types of activities, those are great. Um, and then they're adding some APIs, so I guess other developers can do different types of activities. So they were talking about like swinging a golf club or a baseball bat or something. I'm wondering if, like I said, not just like actual sports, but other activities. Like I was kind of joking, when this whole tracking thing first came out, I'm like, well, I'm starting to play drums. And I just, when I do play drums, I do put my watch on, or I wear my watch and I set it to the other activity because there's obviously no drumming activity. But I'll go for half hour through 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and I'll track it. And then, I don't know if like a developer would think to do that and be like, hey, we can make a drumming activity and, measure the way you're, because they were talking about how you can move your wrists or your hands and whatever, and tracking that type of thing. Maybe I could see where they'd be like, oh, are you playing evenly? Like, are you like sometimes you're hitting the drums too hard and then you're going light? And like, is there a reason for that? Are you rushing and then playing catch up? There's all these little sort of consistency mechanics to playing the drums where I don't know. Maybe the API will let something like that happen. Who knows? But I don't know. It was interesting, I guess. Um, that covers, I think, the most of it. Focuses on widgets, and again, widgets. I think there was like on the iPad, and I know they talked about widgets on the Mac. Oh, we did talk a little bit about like Apple TV and AirPods. So the AirPods, they're having a new thing where it's supposed to detect when you are talking. So you could be kind of walled off in your music or your media, and then if you start talking, it's like, oh, you're having a conversation now, and it'll kind of go into that transparency mode where you can actually hear your environment more. So I don't know. I mean, the AirPods sound kind of neat from a tech perspective. Um, but I've never liked putting things in my ear. I never really liked the earbud style of headphones. So I don't know. I would like to try a new version, a new pair, to see if I like them, to see if they fit any better. But yeah, I've just never been into the whole earbuds thing. The other thing that they did talk about is they talked about reducing background noise. So if someone's at like a big event outside where there's music or construction or something in the background, it'll try to isolate that a little bit better. And I've heard other podcasts in the past do comparisons, like oh, let's do a mic test, and we're going to do a call on 5 different earbuds or headsets. And the one that Apple was showing at the event yesterday, their keynote, seemed a little bit suspicious. It seemed a little bit too clear, because even listening to, say, like I said, some of these other podcasts, the AirPods sounded reasonably good, but they weren't near that clear. That just seemed to be maybe a little bit doctored to me. Apple TV, of course, they're getting like some of your VoIP apps, so like Zoom and WebEx. um, Apple TV is getting a few more features here and there. Share Play, hotels and stuff like that. More Share Play options. CarPlay to your phone stuff. So let's say you have a driver. You and your buddies are going on a road trip, and your driver, he's like, okay, and then everyone connects to kind of their CarPlay, and then all of you can contribute songs to the playlist as you're cruising down the road. So that there's some neat things about that. But that's really kind of what stood out to me. I'm sure I missed a few things, but I really want to get into talking the last part of this video. I want to dive into the Apple Vision Pro headset a little bit more, because I do have lots of questions, quite a few reservations, but I see actually a fair bit of potential here. Now, what I will say going up front is they're saying it's early next year, sometime. We don't have a release date yet, but sometime next year. And even I was a little bit shocked at they said starting at $34.99. $3,500 for this sucker. It is expensive. Everyone was speculating $3,000 or so, give or take. And then somebody had said, oh, maybe like yesterday or the day before, oh, maybe they're going to actually release it at 2,000. Yeah, right, Apple. If they can charge you, if they can upsell you for anything, they will charge as much as humanly possible. And here's the weird thing is, so when I watched the part of the keynote that was all about the headset, and the way they demonstrated it, this was a developers conference, but the way they showed it off is they really kind of geared it, they kind of demonstrated it like it was a consumer grade event targeted toward you and me, which in part ways it sort of is. But at that price, who in the hell is going to buy it? Not that many people, I have to assume. And, if they would have marketed it, said, hey, this is, we know the price is a little bit high right now, but we want developers, we're really excited about the hardware, the potential of the new interface stuff. There's a lot here that combines augmented and virtual reality. We want developers to get in there. Here's some of the stuff that we're potentially aiming for. And we're going to release this headset. Anyone can come out and buy it. But if we're really gearing this toward developers so we can get some apps in our headset app store, that would have made a little bit more sense to me, because, like I said, there's so many people who are just struggling to begin with, right now. I mean, affording utilities and rent and groceries and stuff like that, and then to be able to go, oh, I'm gonna just run out and buy a $3,500 VR headset because sure, why not? Is it cool? Yeah, absolutely. I think the hardware is actually really well designed for the most part. There's two key things about the hardware that I don't like. One, and well, yeah, I mean, really the main one is battery. Um, Battery life, they said, is about 2 hours. And in addition to that, there's an external battery. Now, I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday after the keynote, and I am sort of curious about something. Is there at least a tiny little battery in the headset itself? Because right now they were really saying that, oh, you can either use it plugged in or you can use it on this external battery that you can put in your pocket. Okay, but like, and it connects via this magnetic thing to one of the sides of your headset. I think they said it was magnetic. I mean, what? Because something like the Oculus, the Meta Quest, yeah, the batteries are built in, but like, what if you're using the thing and you accidentally, bump the cable to where the battery pack comes unplugged from the headset? Like, could there be like an internal battery that might last, let's say, like even 5-10 minutes? So you can be like, oh crap, it's not going to just instantly turn itself off in the middle of something because I accidentally pulled the cord and it came it came unhooked. That's a really interesting question that I'm sort of curious about. Um, but I mean, battery level, 2 hours is not much. I mean, I thought 3 to 4 was. I mean, the Quest, it's still not the longest battery life, but at least that seemed a little bit longer. That's the main issue. The cost and the battery stuff is my main or my main kind of hardware issues, or the main selling point issues. Now, the other main thing about it is the user interface. All of these VR headsets so far have come with motion controllers primarily, except the original launch of the Oculus Rift, but even they got the motion controllers eventually. This one is not, it doesn't come with controllers because you're supposed to use motion gestures with your hands, and it's supposed to use like eye gaze technology and your voice. So your voice, your eyes, and your hands. Now the eye thing, I hope that you can disable some of that if you are visually impaired, because what if you're like me and you have nystagmus, rapid eye movement, involuntary rapid eye movement? That's going to really be screwy. I could see just your cursor just flinging, jumping around because your eyes are going nuts. Being able to turn some of that off. And then I would just be able to use touch gestures. Or I keep saying touch, but you know what I mean, hand gestures. Hand gestures and my voice. Now you can connect Bluetooth devices to it. So they showed with Apple Arcade coming to it, you can use like a game controller. So especially if you had like streaming services coming to it, maybe you could connect to like Xbox, like the Xbox cloud services or something. You might be able to do that type of thing. So, and you can use like a Bluetooth keyboard or a Magic Trackpad, Magic Keyboard. So you have different input means in addition to your body, essentially. Your eyes, your voice, and your hands. I did get confirmation, at least via Twitter, somebody who was at the event said that they had talked to someone within the demo area, and they did ask, and voiceover is supposed to be in the headset. Now, beyond that, I don't know. What I really heard was voiceover is in the headset, and you can kind of use your finger to point. So my thought is like, oh, I could have my hand, down at my lap, and then I just kind of move my finger like, oh, let's point up a little bit, kind of like an Explore by Touch, but I'm laser pointering with my finger, and moving around. Or I wonder if I will also be able to do like little flicks. If I think about doing like a flick to the left, a flick to the right, maybe even a rotor gesture. If I turn my hand and it sees me turning and I have voiceover on over the headset, and then I can go through my action rotor, I can go by heading if I'm looking in Safari. Um, it could be really a really neat, intuitive, like instead of doing it on a touchscreen, you're doing it in the air. You're kind of doing this Minority Report thing, which kind of seems badass in a way, I'm not gonna lie. I'm very curious to see, and I suspected because Apple for the last several devices has not let us down. Ever since they figured out how to get voiceover in the Mac and then in the iPhone with the iPhone 3G, every device since has launched with voiceover accessibility. The Apple TV, the iPad, the Apple Watch. So you know what? I was kind of reasonably sure, especially when I was looking at the interface thing. I'm like, yeah, I can see how voiceover would work with this. So yes, it seems like at the very minimum, voiceover is going to be there. And that makes me very intrigued and potentially very kind of excited, not going to lie. Um, Now, the other thing that they're doing is this, I'm glad I saw the presentation because now I understand more of how this works. It's not purely a VR headset. It is not purely an augmented reality headset. It's kind of both. So they have this digital crown on it somewhere, kind of like your Apple Watch has, and you turn it. And this is a really cool idea because this thing has got like, what they say, 12 cameras on the friggin' thing. And they're actually pretty high res cameras, much better than you're going to get on any of like the Quest and stuff. But this crown, you turn it, and it basically determines how much of the real world you want let in. So if you want to be immersed in a virtual environment, you have some presets, or maybe you'll have more later. Like I want to have all my windows in my virtual environment up. I've got multiple screens around me, and I want to sit like I'm in a space station, or I want to sit in like an underwater like aquarium thing, or I want my interface in my real world. I can just turn the crown and choose either or. So it's going to allow you to have experiences that are, basically not walled off, but like, where you cut the world out, like virtual reality. And then it's going to let you have augmented reality experiences where you might have objects within the real world, be it like an app or a game or whatever. Um, so that's actually pretty fascinating. I like that a lot. And some of the use cases they were talking about, if you have a Mac on your desk, especially for all those people who have not, they're technology people, but they haven't learned to touch type, which just still endlessly amuses me. Um, but I digress. You have your Mac in front of you, and you get your headset close to it, and then it pops up your Mac screen in your headset, but then it blackens your actual laptop screen. So you're looking down at the laptop in the real world, but then it's kind of like if you were docking your MacBook to a monitor and then it just blacked out your laptop screen. So if you're out in public somewhere, you could be looking at your big Mac laptop screen in your user interface in VR or AR, but other people wouldn't be able to look over your shoulder and look what you're doing on the actual laptop screen. So that's a pretty smart way to go. And I wonder if they're going to have similar types of things. That's the other thing that I wondered is, can I mirror my iPhone to my headset? Can I look at things on my iPhone within my headset like you could the Mac? And then it would dim out the screen. Could I do that with an iPad? My other question related to mirroring is the opposite way. Like when I did, I haven't done VR videos in a while, but when I did, when I looked at things in my headset on my Rift, what I was looking at was also mirrored to my computer monitor, which I could then record with my video recording software, and then you guys would get to at least see on a flat screen what I was looking at in virtual reality. Is there going to be that type of, could I mirror my headset even to, let's say, not just a Mac, but especially like an iPad or an iPhone, so that someone else could see what it is that I'm looking at? Because maybe I'm looking at something that is exclusive to the headset, like a 3D environment or something, but then you guys can see a mirrored image of that on your flat screen on an iPad or a Mac or an iPhone. Those are the sort of things that I'm sort of curious about. Speaking of recording, they did also mention there's a button on the headset where you can capture 3D screenshots or 3D video. And this could have some potential interesting use cases. They really focused on, capturing family moments, capturing your kids playing, or maybe a birthday party, and they had them blowing out the candles on the cake. And then when you watch it back on the headset, again, one of the things about virtual reality and even augmented reality is that you're looking at things that it's so hard to explain without you actually trying it. But there's this extra level of depth. You're not looking at a 3D object on a flat screen. It actually looks like you're looking at a 3D object. Like there's that extra three-dimensional sense of depth and immersion that you get in AR and VR that really does add a lot. So that could be, that could be kind of neat. Now, I would not say this is meant to be used like a GoPro. You're going to be using it more for, stationary office at home, relaxing on the couch or in your living room at the office or on a plane in a hotel. You're not really going to necessarily, I would not recommend using it for, mobility, walking around and stuff like that. Because I have a feeling, even with as good as the cameras are, there's going to still be some weird depth perception issues. I highly suspect it's not meant for that. Now, the other thing that I haven't mentioned is the front of the device. Normally where it's just like, oh, you got your cameras and you got your, the front of your device when you're looking at somebody wearing the headset. On this Apple Vision Pro, it's a thing of glass, and I guess there's cameras inside the headset that like look at your eyes, and it's like the front part is actually like a screen, so that like when other people are in the room, you can have it where it'll show, like you have the headset on, but the part that's, it's covering your eyes, so it'll project your eyes onto the front part of the screen, which looks really weird, by the way. I mean, I guess if you really want that eye contact, sure, in a meeting or whatever, but to me it just looks freaking weird, man. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of a weird gimmick to it. So there's a lot of technology packed in here. I'm trying to think if there's any other. I talked about the 3D video, the 3D screenshots. You can, of course, just like any augmented or virtual reality interface, you can set your like app windows to be as small or as large as you want, it seems. Again, you can tune in the real world or tune it out. You can put your windows all around you, in front of you, to the side of you, windows on top of each other. Kind of stuff that you've been able to do in like a virtual desktop style app for, in VR for quite a while. But again, not needing controllers, and there's some really neat tech here. Now, here's the thing. I think this thing is still going to have a huge uphill battle in many ways, because as a mainstream device, it's very, very cool. Like I said, with all the features, the technology that they crammed into this thing, as small as it is, despite the battery life and the high cost, there's a lot of cool stuff here. But look at virtual reality. We've been in VR now, or we've had VR available since 2015, 2016. And we've had reasonable success, like especially around the pandemic when everyone was quarantined and had nowhere to go. Um, so, yeah, people were buying the Quest 2s. Especially when the Quest and the Quest 2 came out, that really made VR a lot more affordable compared to even when I invested originally with the Oculus Rift. By the time you got the headset and the controller, the touch controllers later that year, it was like $800 or better. And on top of that, you needed a pretty beefy computer to run it. So at the time, you needed like a 970, 980 video card to run the thing. So you're putting a couple grand in just to use VR, and now to get it to a point where it was at $300 until Oculus went stupid and raised it $100 because reasons. So that's when VR, it got more mainstream, but I still don't hear, other than like the enthusiast crowd, there really hasn't been that thing that has made it, let's use like the Wii, for example. You had people who don't play video games, little kids, moms and dads, senior citizens, like the Wii Sports and the Wii and Wii Sports, man. Everybody wanted. My mom wanted to play the Wii. She's like, "You got a Wii?" Um, which was really funny, but that was this weird kind of tipping point where it's like everybody at least wanted to check it out. And to some degree, like, I mean, like I said, if you experience it, VR is really, really cool. It does have its potential, um, not health, but kind of health and safety issues, mainly like motion sickness and things like that, because a lot of people who have tried VR do experience motion sickness, and that's another thing that Apple did talk about is theoretically they're saying, oh well, we've done this with the better cameras and the latency and whatever. Um, People aren't supposed to get as motion sick or get motion sick at all. Again, that's all marketing hype. That's going to have to be, wait until we're actually have these headsets and people try them and see if they have actually figured out a way around that issue for the vast majority of people. I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm curious. I'm hopeful that somebody figures that out at some point because that is a huge issue. Um, but yeah, like VR, it's gotten more accepted, it's gotten more adopted, but it still, to me, really seems like a niche. It still seems more like an enthusiast. You kind of got to be a tech nerd in a way to really even like really want to do it. Um, if you get one and then you show your family who isn't into technology and they're into it, like one of our drivers that for work. He was just such a cool dude. Like I showed him my Rift, and he's like, "Oh my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen." Like I said, it was so funny. Like when I would show people VR, I think I showed it to like 3 people, and every single person, their first words were literally, "Holy shit!" That's literally what everybody said. I'm not kidding. But it was so funny because like this guy, he's an older guy, senior. But he not only he picked up a Rift, and when the Quest came out, he picked up one of those too. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna check out some of these, nature and world exploring apps." And so there are people who do check it out, but again, that's at a reasonable price. Um, People have gotten used to smartphones now, so the most people are getting smartphones. You have Android or iPhone. Yeah, you do have some people going back to more of these candy bar style phones now. There's a few of those out there, especially in the blindness community, like the Blind Shell 2 and whatnot. Um, but that's smartphones. Like, augmented virtual reality, that's going to be a hard pill to swallow again for your average consumer. at that price. You know, granted, you don't have to buy a computer to pair with it, which is nice, but whew, $3,500 is going to be expensive. So your general user case, like, and here's the thing: is the reason I spend so much time on that is because in order for developers to develop apps for a platform, you have to have at least a minimum buy-in of the devices so people can buy your apps. You know, people can start out making apps, but if no one's there to buy them because no one can afford the damn headset, what's going to happen? You know, app developers are going to go develop something where there's actually a user base. You know, it's like, okay, well, it's going to be higher price in the beginning because you're working through all the technology and you got to, you know, R&D and whatever, sure, whatever. But at the same time, you know, even after 5-8 years, the VR community hasn't really grown. But like I said, I think the advantage that this Apple headset potentially has is that it does VR stuff. But I think it's also looking at augmented reality. And I think they're really pushing even more of the augmented reality versus the virtual stuff. The communication, you know, being in meetings or in an environment with other people virtually, whether they're using a headset or not, using Teams or Zoom or WebEx or whatever, or something within the headset. Having the real world and then your apps and your windows and such. That's not a bad idea. And again, people just ask, like, why do I want to sit with a headset on my head all day? The vast majority of people do not really seem receptive to that. Oh, I'll maybe put one on for 20-30 minutes to play in VR or play in some augmented reality thing or whatever. Oh, okay, it's a novelty. But are you going to be able to convince, is this thing going to be light enough, comfortable enough? You know, people don't want, like, people have this thing of, I don't want to look like a moron making these weird gestures in the air or whatever, or talking to myself. You know, there's this whole kind of perception of, like, I don't want to look weird, you know, if I'm out in public or if I'm in like an airplane or if I'm just sitting somewhere where I'm using this headset, not in my home. You know, for me, I don't care if it's helpful to me or if it's cool or whatever. Like, I don't care, man. I'm the person who walks around with these ginormous headphones out in public, or I'm sitting on the bus and I'm blocking out the world. I don't care. I've got those big Bluetooth headphones that are like big metallic monstrosities, but they sound great for their price. I did a review. Check it out. I don't care. Like, I'll use a headset in public or at work. Yeah, bring it on. I don't care. But a lot of people don't. Here, so as a regular consumer grade device at its current price tag, it's going to be a really uphill battle to get people interested and to buy in. Obviously, a year or 2, 3, 4 down the road, if they can keep it going, there's going to be maybe one that's geared toward $1,000 even. You know, even let's say $1,000 to $2,000, which is at least a bit cheaper. If you could even hit like the $1,000 range, you know, I wonder what kind of sacrifices they're going to have to make. Are they not going to have as much of the high quality cameras in them? We'll just have to see what they'll have to cut in order to get that price point. But maybe, you know, maybe the technology will advance by then, where they can cut that cost. I mean, look at, like, SSD prices have gone down. But here is where I think there is some really untapped potential, is as an assistive technology device. I think this has a lot of interesting potential, especially for blind and low vision users. Because here's the thing. Now, again, I have a lot of questions about the UI. How is that going to work with VoiceOver? How is it going to work with accessibility? But I'm a nerd. I'm a tech geek. That, I will figure it out. I will probably figure it out quite quickly. That's not an issue. But there's still a lot of people who don't really want to use a touchscreen. They are intimidated or overwhelmed and can't really learn a touchscreen that well. New users, older users, or just people who are just whatever for whatever reason don't take to the touchscreen. Now you're trying to explain, like, if you're a trainer, how do you explain a 3D environment to them? Okay, that's going to be a potential challenge. So, because I was talking to somebody on Twitter about this, and he, cool dude. I mean, we're right now we're sort of kind of disagreeing with each other. He has a lot more concerns. I said I have a lot of the same concerns he does, but I think at least for a good chunk of the blind low vision community who now uses an iPhone or an iPad could also potentially learn to use a headset. And here's the thing, is because it does augmented and virtual reality, one thing I didn't yet touch on is they were talking about, yes, there's going to be a separate app store for this device, but in this app store you will have apps that are dedicated exclusively to the Vision Pro headset. But then you are also going to have sections for iPhone and iPad apps that can also be used with it. Now, I don't know what kind of, if you have to do something to port it to the headset, or remember when the iPad first came out, and before they really got the universal apps thing down, you had the iPhone apps that would be like, you could double size it and it would kind of blow it up on an iPad, and it wouldn't look as good, but you could use it that way. Is that how it's going to work, or is it going to be more, easily integrated where an app developer doesn't even really have to do much to make it work with the headset? But here's the thing. How many camera apps are there for the iPhone that could be really cool hands-free? You've got Seeing AI, Envision AI, Be My Eyes, especially when they get that virtual assistant going, Envision AI, Voice Stream Scanner, TapTapC, Ira. Need I go on? I mean, all of those apps are things that blind and low vision users regularly use now, and they're doing it with their phone. Now, they do have Envision glasses, which seem okay. But again, the thing that I've always said about glasses like that is, what are you paying over $3,000 for that? That only is going to work with Envision and maybe a couple other apps that get kind of snuck into their API. So you're paying over $3,000 for these, or maybe it's over $2,000. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what the Envision glasses cost. So forgive me if I got that wrong. But my point is, you're buying these pair of glasses that are going to work with mainly one app, and maybe by extension a couple apps that also sort of get some of their features integrated with it. It's a lot more proprietary and even a lot more closed off. But what have I been saying for the past several years? I want a pair of glasses or a headset that acts as a platform like my phone. If it's got the capable cameras in it, and I can open and close apps and whatnot, then if they're on the platform, again, I could use Voice Stream Scanner, I could use Seeing AI, I could use Envision, I could use Ira, Be My Eyes, any of these things, just like I would on my phone, but it's hands-free. I could just look at stuff. That has a huge potential. And you look at other devices like the Orcam, Iris Vision. There's a couple of different, there's, what is the Patriot, which is basically the Iris Vision, but a little bit different. The Iris Vision and the Patriot, those are, or the Vision Buddy, those are standalone headsets that you're paying a couple grand for minimum, that, okay, their primary focus is magnification. You're going to use a head-mounted CCTV. You might be able to do some basic OCR of text. You might be able to, like, I think, like the Vision Buddy, you can watch YouTube videos, or I think Iris Vision, you can watch YouTube videos or something. So there's a couple extra things that you can do. But largely, again, you're paying a couple grand. And again, not saying these devices are bad. I was really tempted to get an Iris Vision for a while. I was kind of waiting for the latency stuff to go down for the interactive stuff on the Vision Buddy, but I like what they were doing. But, you know, like I said, if the cameras are good, if the developers are able to develop these kind of apps for the headset, you could have these types of things on a more, it's still going to be a closed platform. It's still going to be a walled garden, but it's still going to be, you know, again, there are thousands and thousands of iPhone apps. There could be hundreds or thousands of Apple Vision Pro apps, headset apps. So that's the potential where, if you look at this as not just a end consumer device, if you look at this as a mainstream assistive technology device, and you look at, okay, $3,500, yeah, that's mighty expensive. But if you bought an Iris Vision, and then you bought a portable CCTV, or if you bought let's say you bought a Iris Vision, or you bought an Orcam, but then you bought, you know, something else. But now, if you could get that, you know, you could look at barcodes, you could have things read aloud, you could recognize people. And not only that, is if you, let's say that I OCR'd some text, and then I had basically like kind of iOS voiceover commands, now I have the same capability that I do on my phone. I can copy that text, paste it into an email, paste it into a note or a Word document, or whatever. You know, I could put it into VoiceStream Reader. If, you know, maybe there's a VoiceStream Reader app, and VoiceStream Reader and Scanner could work together in the AR headset, you know, in the headset. And then that would also be, you know, it's an Apple device, so why wouldn't it be on iCloud as well? And all that stuff then would just get synced to your phone. There's lots of potential here. And of course, it's going to be, you know, it'll depend on how app developers are going to be able to develop for it. But again, if the cameras are good enough, and, you know, we have things like voiceover built in. My other question is, are they going to have, I want to know what other accessibility features they may have. I really hope that they have not just the Zoom app, you know, for magnifying what's on the screen, but I really hope they have the built-in like iOS magnifier app, because think about this. I could hit a button, or I could just say like, open magnifier, and then it would, you know, I'd be in AR mode, and my whole screen would just be a magnifier. And then if I just pinch to zoom in midair with my hand, and I would just zoom in, and that would be just another thing that and then again, remember, like on iOS, magnifier has all these other things where you're detecting things in the scene, it OCRs text, it recognizes doorways. You know, in the last couple of years, how they're adding all these things to the magnifier app if you have voiceover on. Again, your door detection, your OCR of text in the environment, you're identifying objects in the world when you point at them or when you tap the screen. Doesn't that kind of seem like a test for a freaking augmented reality headset? I mean, that just seems like a big old test if there ever was one. Because now they've already sort of been playing with this for a few years on the phone. And now you could be wearing this headset on your head, and these features are already there. So I have to almost suspect, I will hope, I'm not going to assume, but just like voiceover, I would have to hope that the magnifier app might also be there, because then it literally just turns your whole augmented reality camera that you're already looking at, and you can literally probably pinch to zoom, and you could zoom in really far. And like I said, you have those other benefits of, in iOS 17, you have the thing where you're pointing at your appliance, like you're wearing this thing in your kitchen, and it'd be kind of neat, like you have um, a recipe on the side, but you're looking at your main environment in front of you. And then I look over to the side, I make a little gesture, and VoiceOver reads me the line of text that I'm reading. And then I look down at my countertop again, and then I'm doing the stuff that it tells me to do in the recipe. I point at my oven, or I point at my microwave or whatever, and like, oh, okay, I need this touchscreen thing. I need to figure out what that button is. There's interesting potential. Again, then you combine that with something like the Be My Eyes virtual assistant, and be like, oh, tell me about what's on this page, and then it's like you're working within the real environment, you're working hands-free. Now, could this whole thing fall apart and not even come close to the stuff that I'm imagining? Absolutely. It could come crashing down. It could just be, a wishful dream, but now that I sort of understand more, at least I think I understand more, the combination of AR and VR that this headset is going to support, will it be for everybody? No. Will everybody be able to afford it, especially in the beginning? God, no. But part of me, especially if I learn more about what accessibility features are going to be on the headset, and if I hear more about the assistive technology community, if Voice Dream says like, yeah, let's check out let's make a headset app for this, or if Be My Eyes or Seeing AI, or if I catch word that some of these things, yeah, we're going to try to support this thing. Again, not looking at it as a mainstream toy or like a gaming device or a consumer headset, but if I look at it as a mainstream assistive technology device that isn't near as limited in its scope and features as what we have now, then $3,500 doesn't seem as unreasonable, because again, assistive technology, at least traditional assistive technology companies, I would argue, price is the main barrier. You're paying a lot of money for a very specific set of things. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, because sometimes that one specific use case is exactly what I need. I need a very clear, very responsive magnifier. I need a braille display to be able to read braille. I need whatever it is I need, and I get that. But like I said, I'm excited, potentially excited to see what some of these accessibility use cases are for this Apple Vision Pro headset. So it's very early on. Is the thing going to flounder? Is the price tag just going to kill it before it even has a chance? I've heard a lot of people also say that, if they were so hyped on how well this device is, why aren't they going to release it this fall when people want to have some cool gadget for the holiday? And I get that. I totally do. And yeah, I think that would be the smart thing to do in a way. But I've also heard they're having, because of the complexity of this device, manufacturing issues, just getting it enough manufactured. I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot up in the air. There's a lot of potential, like, how is it going to do this? How is it going to do that? Let me look at my phone here, because I wrote down, like when I was watching that VR part, or the headset part, I did write down a couple of questions that I was thinking about. Like I said, we can use controllers or keyboards with it. That's cool. I did also forget to mention that it does this more spatial audio stuff. What do they call it? Like ray traced audio, which again sounds really gimmicky to me, and I'll need to really hear it to believe it. But again, positional audio, if it's done super well, that can have really interesting blind applications. Again, look at Seeing AI and look at the environment thing, where you can pinpoint where things are in the environment and you just look at stuff. No, that could be good. Um, so I can pair a controller, and I was wondering at first, like, can it be a virtual reality device? Yeah, potentially it could. So if you wanted, maybe you could use other paired controllers with it. Maybe you could. Um, the other thing that I was sort of wondering is, could I lay down and watch videos or content that way? I've a few times I've thought about, like, it would be really cool just to be able to, get a projector or something and then just project like a TV on my ceiling if I want to watch a bed or watch a movie in bed. But like if I'm, even if I'm at a hotel or if I'm at home and I just want to kick back and I don't want to just maybe I don't want to I don't want to disrupt my partner in bed. What if I just had the headset on and I was just watching it when I was laying down looking up at the ceiling? Could I do that with this headset? Or do you have to be always facing, more forward? I'm curious about that. Because I would totally use it that way if I could. They did talk about Disney. Oh, yes, Optic ID. I forgot to touch on that. Optic ID, just like Face ID, Touch ID, I guess because it has the cameras that will also project your eyes on the outward part of the headset. That's also what they're going to do as a authentication thing, like Touch ID or Face ID. Of course, I have questions about that. Again, people with nystagmus, like myself, is that going to work? What if you are totally blind and you have prosthetic eyes? Can that still work? Are there other ways of authentication? Like, can I put on the headset and use a virtual keyboard to enter a PIN? If the eye thing doesn't work, or if I bring my phone close to it and that is already unlocked, then can that unlock, like, when you have your phone or your watch near your Mac? So are there multiple ways besides the eye gaze authentication for that to work? So yeah, those are some of the questions. Those are some of the things that this thing should be able to do. And like I said, just sort of brainstorming some of these potential accessibility and assistive technology use cases. This is kind of the headset that I've been wanting for the past several years, because like I said, ever since we've had a lot of these camera apps on the phone, and then we've had the Envision glasses, and we've talked about like wearables that can do the types of things these apps do. I mean, that's why the Orcam was made, because they're like, well, we want to do something hands-free. For me, so like I said, this device may not be for everybody, but for some people, like potentially myself, I think, especially once they refine it, maybe after a couple of years, I think it could be just what I've kind of wanted as a wearable platform. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a like if you did. Follow me on Twitter at BGFH79, twitch.tv/illegally-cited, illegally-cited.com, and right here on YouTube. Stay tuned, because again, there's going to be a Diablo 4 video tomorrow, and there's going to be probably other videos over the weekend with all the gaming shenanigans happening later this week. So until next time, I will chat with everybody again later.